We are at the end of 2020. That's exciting.
Yes. So it's our last 2020 episode of Books Take a Village.
It is indeed. Shall we do an intro?
Yes, let's do an intro. Welcome to Books Take a Village. I am Britta Jensen, author of the Aloy Born series, and this is my compadre.
I'm Amanda Bennett, and I write under A.R. Bennett.
And we are here to welcome you to talk about writing during the holidays.
Okay. So I've done none. I have done zero writing, with the exception of journaling. But yeah, my projects went dormant at the end of November because Nano kicked my butt.
Yeah, no,
Um,
so kicked my butt.
totally kicked my butt. What about you? How's your holiday writing going?
Well, I will show you what my plan was. So this is the chart I made for myself. We
Hmm.
don't really need to see that thing in detail. But I just kind of tick off each day that I've done something. So I'm now in the third revision of which chapters I'm supposed to revise which days, because I had Nano where I gave myself the goal of rewriting 10,000 new words, but I also took a course from the Faber Academy, which meant that I also had to rewrite another 10,000 words. So at this point I have 30,000, almost 40,000 words rewritten. But the brain gets tired when you're rewriting. It messes with you. It says, hey, this really sucks. You might want to rethink how you're writing that. And you're like, no, I need to get the words on the page because I know what I'm doing here. And then as you're writing it, your brain's like, no, you don't really know what you're doing. Maybe you should go have some eggnog. Maybe you should make some brownies. Maybe you should make some face masks. Hey, maybe you should do all these other fun things that you haven't been doing for a long time because you've been working on your book.
So your internal critic is more ready for a holiday than you are, huh?
Totally. Yeah. So I
Well,
think I got like 4, 5 chapters done, maybe.
that's awesome. I have written zero words, but I have a plan, and I'm actually very excited about that plan. So my stuff's been dormant since Nano, and I made the hard decision of splitting the first novel into two books because
Right.
part one and part two, there really was a clear delineation. And in order to get where book one needs to be, I had to basically save that next chunk for the next novel. So I've kind of been working. I've been thinking about the book, but I haven't been writing the book, which I realize like so many authors say that, but like it is a true part of the process because you have to kind of like recalibrate when you make big story changes. Did I need 4 weeks? Probably not. But it did give me the time to go back through my list of all the things. I have like all my scenes written out, and I went back through and like made my notes for what I want to accomplish in each of those scenes. So really, it's just getting back to the page, which is so hard when you've been away for so many weeks.
It is, especially like when you have a big project that you've just split. And so it's good that you're mentioning that because, yeah, I'm getting back to some parts of Orphan Pods I haven't seen in 2 years, 3 years. And so it's like, wait, what was I thinking when I wrote this?
Uh-huh.
Maybe it doesn't matter anymore because I'm rewriting it anyway. Oh, but yeah, yeah, and I think it's actually good that the time that you spend thinking, as long as you're doing notes and you're doing something that you can refer back to, I think that's really helpful. Or even like writing into a voice recorder or otter.ai and just saying, okay, I need a record of what I'm thinking about, because I'll often think like the technology in the book that I'm working on is really, really intense. And I've done some interviews with some researchers that know about this particular type of technology that has to do with hovercrafts, which we don't currently have, but we have something somewhat similar. And also, I need to really understand electrical engineering slightly better than I do because my characters understand it. And so it's like, oh,
I think that you make such a great point because when you're writing speculative fiction, so fantasy, sci fi, we're not just writing a story, we are
Mhm.
inventing worlds. And in a lot of ways, that makes it a whole lot harder because we're having to
Oh yeah.
create things that don't exist, or we're having to dream up stuff that we might have eventually in the future, but you have to make it plausible based on what we know today. Yeah, or you're creating magical systems that have to have certain things that operate in a way that is believable to the point where the reader can suspend, their disbelief. So I think like that is so, so hard to build alongside the story itself. Uh, so I don't know if this is something that you do, but I did find kind of breaking out world building as a separate exercise and like
Mhm.
how some of these systems operate. Um, that way, when I am going and doing the rewrite, I can actually infuse some of those components and make the world so much richer for it.
Oh, completely. Yeah, like I stopped. That's what's been slowing me down is stopping and saying, okay, what are the units of currency?
Hmm.
And I wanted to call them OTs, OT, because they use coins.
Hmm.
But OT looks like a typo.
Oh, yeah.
Like people are gonna look at that and it just joggles your or joggles your mind? No, it jostles your mind. And so yeah, I was like, oh, and then a scientist that is my friend, he's like, why don't you just use UGHT and call them OTS? And I'm like, okay, that'll do for now, but I think I'm going to change it again.
I mean, like that's so funny. Like so much of what we do is just a placeholder for where we're going. And I think that sometimes, like, I don't know if this is something that you've encountered, but like you make a story decision and you keep writing, knowing that you're gonna have to go back and fix it later. Like, that takes so much willpower not to go back and fix all the things after you've made a story change.
Oh, completely, completely. Like, yeah, because I changed like the timeline of the two different narrators, and I also realized I was like, wait, I don't actually know how this particular thing works. And so I'll create in, I don't know if you've done this in Scrivener, where I'll just kind of create questions of things that don't need to be answered now, but are going to need to be answered on the next rewrite.
Yep. I keep those, I keep way more handwritten than I think I is probably safe, but I do make note of those things. Um, yeah. I have a question for you.
Yes.
So I am not huge into like New Year's resolutions, but I do like to look forward to the new year and start thinking about what would I like to, where would I like to take my writing
Mhm.
in the next 12 months. So let's talk a little bit about where you'd like to take your writing in the next 12 months.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. And I'm curious too, like what your process is um for coming up with that, like what you're going to do in the new year.
Yep.
Yeah, because I usually do like a vision quest on January the 1st. And so I'll spend like the afternoon, 2 or 3 hours just kind of, and I have on my wall here, I put like the little vision quests that I've done, and then I file them each year and add to them. And
That's
so
cool.
like, yeah. So I think for me, I would love to be able to like, I try to look at like process more than kind of things that other people have control over and
Mhm.
just concentrate on the things I have control over. Like I want to write 3 days a week because my work schedule has picked up to the point where it's difficult to write every morning. But if
Mhm.
I say Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then Saturdays, that means that I know I can block out that time on my calendar.
Mhm.
And I have like some other goals to like submit to agents in 6 months if the work feels like it's ready. Um, and then also making sure that I meet my daily goals of writing now when I don't have work right now,
Mhm.
because I have to submit, like kind of creating benchmarks for myself where I have to submit to others and deal with that horrible process of them reading something that I know needs to change, but I also don't know exactly. I haven't made a decision, and I feel like the conversation will help me to make a decision.
Yep.
So, yeah,
Totally get that. And
yeah.
we're recording this on December 30th. So we're like right smack in the middle between like the Christmas holiday and the New Year holiday. And so it's a weird liminal time, right? And so part of me is like, I'm just going to think about what I'm going to try to do between today and January 4th when I go back to work. But then beyond that, I'm thinking through, um, some of the milestones I'd like to hit as far as submission. Um, there are a couple of different programs I'd love to try to participate in as well. And so I think one of the things that I need to start with is getting those dates on the calendar and kind of working backwards. Um, and also finish the rewrite. Um, you know, there are really cool contests that are happening. I submitted last year to the Writers League manuscript contest. I would like to submit again this year, which that's in the spring, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
March.
Mm-hmm.
And, as long as all the things go the way we hope that they go, perhaps attending a conference this year, that's definitely a
Oh,
goal.
yeah.
I've never been, and it just really kind of sucks that obviously, the pandemic sucks, but the timing in particular in where I am with my writing and where I'd like to go, like June of 2020 would have been the first one that I would have attended, but it's gonna be 2021, and I'm totally fine with that. So getting my work to a place where maybe I can actually have a non-bumbling, grasping conversation with an agent or two, that would be really cool. I have big goals for
Mm-hmm.
2021 to not stumble through a conversation with an agent. I would love to have a coherent, non-panicked conversation with an agent. That would be fantastic.
What would that be like? I don't know what that's like, because the only time I can have a normal conversation with them is when I'm not talking about my work, or they surprise me because I'm on a panel for something with them and they're like, "So, what are you going to tell me about your writing?" And I'm just like, and they can just see that look on my face. They're like, "It's okay. Like, it's just me. We've been talking for a while now. Let's just talk about your writing." And I'm just like, elevator pitch that has been memorized. Yeah. And so it's fun. Like, I've only had like one agent. Her name's Caroline, and I can't remember her last name. And she was the easiest person to talk to about my work. And so I think it's just because she has this just presence of just ease, and everything is going to be fine. And I've got everything in check. And I'm like, wow, you're both nice and composed, and you have it together. What's your secret?
Meanwhile, I've not actually been in the room with a working agent before. So it's a spectrum, to be sure.
I think yeah, that's a good point. And I think the beautiful thing is that they're most likely not going to remember talking to you
I mean,
when you
that's a
when
fair
you
statement.
when you pitch them. They're likely not going to remember you. And it's nice because when you write to them, you can be like, "I met you at XX conference." They're like, "Oh, good. I'm going to put you at the top of my pile to read because I've met you." And so yeah, they kind of expect us to be nervous. It's our work. It's, this
Yeah,
thing that we've been slaving over for years.
that nobody asked us to do. So it's like so much more vulnerable for that reason. Like yes, it's our work. And also like nobody asked us to do this. This is just a
Oh,
thing that we decided that we wanted to do because we love it. And now we're just looking for approval. And that's hard.
yeah. Yeah, because I think they're looking at it through a different lens than we are. They're saying, okay, what publishers do I know and have relationships with that this work I could actually pitch to everybody that I have a relationship with.
Will it
And
sell?
yeah, like, will it sell? Will they even, take it on?
Hmm.
And I think with speculative fiction, there's that extra um, hurdle,
Hmm.
because as you've mentioned earlier, with your editing also for the narrative, but also for the world.
Hmm.
Because if the world isn't married with the narrative really nicely. There's extra work to be done, and
Mhm.
a lot of that work is actually really annoying.
It's not the fun stuff, right? Like
No.
you've got the dialogue, you've got the dynamics with the characters, you've got the world, but like if it doesn't fit together in a coherent way that they each enhance the other, then it's like it just it misses the mark in such a way that like people don't feel comfortable reading it because it's not believable, even though it's fantasy or sci-fi.
Oh, completely. Like I was thinking back to some scenes that I'd written in the spaceships in Hirana's War, and I was like, oh, I don't even want to reread them. Mm.
So if you're cringing,
Because I'm like, oh, I didn't really like look in more detail just because their ships are slightly different than anything we really have in literature now. But I don't feel like I did my due diligence with those ships. And so, so this is why the holidays are fun, because you get to not only like think about all of the fun things you want to do with your family during a pandemic, but might not be able to. But you know, your body feels like it needs to take time off. But at the same time, you also are like, I have this space
mhm,
maybe to do this work, or I have to tell people no because I have to do this work. And it gives you a little bit of extra mental space to be like, oh, now I'm seeing the whole picture of what I've done in the past that I don't want to do with this book. And so you put extra pressure on yourself. And I think that's the hard part for me at the holidays, is that I have a little bit of extra time, but I also, with that extra headspace, I don't know if I'm always utilizing it effectively.
you make such a great point because I did have the time off between Christmas Eve and January 4th. And we did go see my parents, socially distanced, very safe with everybody else. So it was really nice to be able to spend that time with them. But I had nowhere else to be, nowhere else to go. Usually we're traveling here, there, everywhere during that time. And so we went nowhere else. And so I stayed a little bit longer with my folks. Well, I was looking at the calendar. I'm like, I really would like to carve that time out. And it's hard to have that conversation with family when you maybe haven't seen them in months, and you're taking this big risk of exposing people, traveling. Fortunately, it was just an hour and a half drive for us, but the added pressure of the pandemic meant whatever time you are spending together and taking that risk, it's like you want to have as much time together as you can. But there's also still this like recognition of two things. One, it's such a gift to have this extra time off. So protecting that time so you can allow yourself to have that headspace to do the creative work. And also recognizing that perhaps that creative work that you feel like you need to get done, maybe it just means being quiet. Maybe you aren't putting out a whole lot of output. Maybe it looks like sitting quietly, taking notes, maybe rereading some things, reevaluating. Maybe it's not all words on a page, um, which is kind of how I've had to, I guess, be kind to myself, because my expectation was I would get all this writing done between December 30th, which is today, and January 4th. But the reality is, like, I can only do what I can with what energy I have and with what brain space I have. And so it's not feasible to think I'm going to rewrite half this book in what, 5 days. So and nor do I have to. But what I want to try to reestablish is that practice of being with the story and writing more frequently and getting back into that rhythm, because I had it um, before December. And I miss that time and that space.
Yeah, and I think you make an excellent point about that, you know, giving yourself the space, especially with speculative fiction or even like historical fiction, to say, okay, I've got to think more deeply with this space that I have, but also allow myself to have time with people that I care about, because otherwise you don't have that well that's being refilled.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, you're operating on empty. And writers' brains don't operate well on empty at all. At least mine doesn't. Um, and I think that that rhythm is really important. And also like that's why I like using like different tools to get a sense of how long it takes me, because I find that over the holidays it actually takes me a lot longer because I have a little bit more time. I use more time, which
Yeah.
is okay. Like it's okay to do that because my brain is like, hey, I really want to know how this works, or I want to sketch out this thing. Um, and I think having an end goal, because like what I'll do is I'll take out my I'll actually double calendar, which sounds ridiculous, but I'll put on my calendar actual like chapter numbers that I want to review,
Hmm.
so that, and then I actually put it on its own sheet that I can check off.
Hmm.
And it somehow is a way of just putting into my muscle memory, hey, you have this thing you need to work on. So I try to craft I mean, during COVID-19, I only have like two households that I see, and we hang out outside. And so,
Not a whole
so
lot of socializing happening.
no, it's mostly on the screen, which is fine, but that still is, time that could be spent writing, um, but actually contributes to the writing as well. Because I find that like the scenes that I love to write, and I'm curious what scenes you like to write as well, are definitely the love scenes,
Mm.
or the scene right before a character knows that the other character likes them. That is my favorite. Like all those awkward interactions and them like, over analyzing and like, oh, I'm going to concentrate on this wire that I have to fix, but oh, I just touched her hair by accident. Oh, I'm curious like what scenes you like to write.
Oh, so I really like writing arguments, like sassy arguments, especially ones where like one character clearly has the upper hand and the other is like trying so hard to like regain control. I love that. I also really like writing cozy scenes, like after all of the craziness has happened and like you follow the character kind of back into their like intimate like nest, like wherever it is they feel most comfortable. Cause I feel like after all of the like explosions and craziness and all of that, like those quiet moments right after, I feel like is very revealing of the character of how they deal with those hard things, or do they sit with it? Do they are they self-destructive? Do they lash out? Are they seeking retribution? Like I love those quiet moments where they're sitting with those emotions and they're trying to figure out what to do next, because I feel like that's that's where you get to know the characters.
Oh, completely. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I also like writing the really tragic moments
Mm,
that they're looking back on, like something really, really awful and terrible. Um, and it's not so much I like thinking about the awful, terrible thing, but I like to see how different characters react to those difficult things,
mm.
and how they try to overcome like really extreme trauma.
Yeah,
Um,
I like that too. Which I think again reveals the character, like who they are in their core and what they choose to do with who they are at their
mhm.
core. Um, yeah, so I love that stuff. Like what I don't really care to write is like I'm actually struggling with this myself. Like um, the villain in my story, I am so worried that it's going to fall like totally flat. And so I need to
Oh,
spend some time with what my protagonist, thinks about this person and like the interactions that they've had with them over the years and like how it's different now. And um, maybe I'll spend some time with that today. I don't know. But
yes, I think you should.
that's what I love about having like a little bit of time actually set aside to work on these things, because it's like when we're going about our day and if when your job requires a lot of mental load, it's so hard to invite that space because your brain is just tired and done. So,
Oh, totally.
yeah.
And yeah, and that's why I'm glad you bring that up, because I'll set aside my mornings for writing, just because I do better writing in the morning, when I'm actually tired. Because I
Mm,
find that I'm not quite awake. Like in graduate school, I used to get up at 4 in the morning to write my papers, which is insane. Like
mm.
I can't do that anymore. My body won't let me.
If I'm seeing 4 a.m., it's because I never went to bed,
Yeah, basically.
which I cannot do anymore either.
Yeah, no, I just like I get dizzy if I wake up too early. But like I can get up, I think like at 5 or 6 if I've gone to bed really early. During the pandemic, my sleep schedule was really interrupted, where I go to bed a lot later
Hmm.
and I get up a little bit later. And so I usually will start with walking, even if it's just to go take the recycling out. But I notice it gets a lot of my anxiety about what I'm going to write out of my system, even though I have the damn thing printed here. Like it's not like it's not like I'm writing something entirely brand new. But that helps. And even if I only get in 20 minutes
Hmm.
before I have to have a meeting with a client or work on another project, it's so helpful. So I was going to ask you another question about like when what are some like some of the goals that you've thought of so far that you have for this year that are things like you have control over?
There's a mentorship program that I would like to apply for to get a mentor. So that submission process starts in January. So that's one thing I would like to do. I think most of my goals are based around particular like submission points in the year. Um, I would like to have the rewrite finished. I feel like April is feasible because there's another contest that I would like to submit for over the summer. Well, late spring is when they open up.
Mhm.
Um, and so I feel like those are the two milestones, plus, of course, the manuscript contest for Writers League, because getting back into that. So three submissions that I am aiming for this year, for the first part of this year. And then I think after the spring, depending on where the novel is, I will either do another rewrite or I might even start drafting the second book in
Yes.
greater detail. Because I feel like I need to get more traction with the rest of the story so that if and when someone wants to read the first one and if they want to buy it, I can say I already have the second one drafted.
Yeah. Yeah, it's super helpful to have the second one drafted.
Which I also realize like all of these are very ambitious goals. And so like I just have to take it, I have to kind of work backwards um,
Mhm.
with, putting those things on the calendar for like when are my absolute like last dates to have these things ready. Um, for the submission in January, like I don't even like they haven't even released the application yet. So I have no idea what it's going to
Mhm.
require. So those are the things that are actually kind of disruptive to the rewrite process. When I have to like stop working on the project so that I can go apply for something else. Like as far as like tangible goals, I do want to write more. And I feel like I need to protect that time better than I have in the past.
And it's hard because you have to say no to so many
Mhm.
things that are such a regular part of your life.
Mhm.
Like I gave up dancing Argentine tango. Um, I stopped knitting as much as I do. Like I only do a little bit of it. Um, but I did it kind of in stages.
Like pulling
Um,
back.
mhm. um, like it was easy with Argentine tango because I broke my foot and I couldn't dance for
It's
four
like a
months.
forced hiatus.
Oh yeah, yeah. And then I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia after I broke my foot.
Mhm.
Because I was like, wait, I fell downstairs 3 times. Something's wrong with me.
Mhm.
The doctor's like, yeah, let's get that checked out. And so I think there were a couple of just like life circumstances that helped me make those decisions a little bit.
Mhm.
But I just kept looking at like how and reading about other writers. And also I applied for a mentorship and was accepted. And so through the mentorship, um, I discovered that I kind of got into my muscle memory. Okay, these are the things I need to do to be able to submit work for feedback every so many weeks.
Mhm.
And after that, my writing life completely changed.
And
Um,
that's a big part of why I wanted to participate in something like that, um, was to have that level of accountability.
oh yeah, because like generally they're expensive, and so I had to save up a lot of money, and eat rice and beans, not really, but kind of, um, and couldn't do things that I normally like liked to do, and so it meant that there was that there was that sense of, okay, this is the rhythm that I've needed to have all along.
Mhm.
You know, and so I think that's good. And I think it's good to have like a combination of like, while I had the mentorship, I still continued to have people that critiqued my work, but
Mhm.
I also got a better sense of what a good critique looks like.
Yeah. Took me a while to learn what that process looks like because I feel like I give much better feedback than I did when I first started.
And it takes time because I think like different people, when people are at different stages in their work, they need different things.
Sure.
Um, and so when you've been through a ton of edits, you can take on the granular stuff. Whereas when you're like still in the weeds, you're like, no, I just need to know about ideas. Like, how are my ideas working? Oh, I'm using that word over and over again. Okay, that's good to know too.
It's like, is the work compelling? Is it coherent? Do you
Yeah.
want to read more?
Yeah, exactly. Like, what confuses you?
Hmm.
Like, what in the world do you have questions about at the beginning? Like I met with the Society of Children's Writers and Book Illustrators, one of their critique groups on Monday. And it
Hmm.
was great because I got really actionable feedback and they said great things like, these are the questions I have so far, but I do realize this is the very beginning. And so
Hmm.
later on, some of these things might be resolved, but I just wanted you to know what my questions were. And I'm like, thank you for saying that. Instead of saying, I'm so confused. What's happening? And you're like, no, that's not helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it does take experience to be able to give good feedback.
Yeah, I think so. But I'm excited to share some goals with you when we meet again, because I think once I do my big vision quest, I'll be curious to see what you have on your plate.
Yeah, let's make that our next conversation. We'll share our actionable goals and yeah,
Yeah, that
anything
sounds
else that
good.
might come up because I know like we have a topic, but then we sort of devolve into other things. But we'll
I
bring it back around full circle.
know.
Very much looking forward to setting the stage for the new year and hitting those milestones.
Yeah, and I'm excited to hear what other writers have in their goals and milestones, particularly like things that they want to do that other people have control over and things that they have control over, so they can feel more balanced about their approach.
Absolutely.
So,
So let's
yeah.
ask them. Tell us what you're
Yes.
going to be doing.
Yes, tell us what you're going to be doing so we can encourage you and send hand claps from the sidelines, from
Yes.
backstage.
Backstage, slow clap. No, no, no. Very enthusiastic clapping.
Being like, woo!
Um, all right. So, with
Okay, good.
that, I hope you and everyone out there has a happy new year.
Happy New Year.
2021, here we come.